So we've been talking to all the smart people we know about what's going on really in Venezuela, and I wanted to get Brandon Weichert on and get his opinion. So Brandon, how are you doing, man? Thanks for joining me.
I'm good. Thanks for having me, as always.
I saw some of the stuff you were posting on Venezuela. I've done a lot of business down there. I know it pretty well, and it interests me. I don't think it's about drugs. What
No,
do you think this is about?
no, I think drugs is the cover. It's the cover
Yeah.
story, for lack of a better term. I actually think that this all goes back to 2020, the stolen election claims in the
Mm-hmm.
United States. We know that a Venezuelan election official has turned whistleblower in the ongoing Tina Peters tragedy. Tina
Mm-hmm.
Peters, of course, is the Mesa County, Colorado election official who had the gumption to do her job
Yeah.
and try to audit the electronic voting machines that were in her county, and she was put in prison for her troubles. But there's an ongoing appeal, and they've got this Venezuelan to come forward as a whistleblower, and he explained under oath how, and you can access it online. That's General Flynn and Patrick
Mm-hmm.
Byrne, some of
Yeah,
these
we
other
put it
guys.
out. Yeah.
So, yeah, and you put it out, right? So
Mm-hmm.
anybody can access it. But this Venezuelan official claimed that the Maduro regime has for years had awareness of the multiple electronic vulnerabilities in our electronic voting machines. The allegation is, I believe, that Smartmatic, which was founded by a group of Venezuelan expatriates, it was created to basically manipulate electronically elections all over the world. And in fact, I believe 3 officers of this company are indicted in a Florida grand jury for charges, if memory serves, in Philippines from
Mm-hmm.
2016, saying that they were
Correct.
bribing election officials. So this all goes into Trump's allegations that the 2020 election was stolen. Trump believes, I think he's under the impression that this is 100% accurate, and so he's under the impression that Maduro played a decisive role in stealing the 2020 election for Joe Biden. And that is actually largely, I think, what's at play here. I was told by somebody who knows Luis Cannon, who was a very important member of the Trump campaign in 2024. He's very connected with many people in Latin America, notably the Maduro regime. He was trying to help get a deal between Maduro and Trump. And my understanding is in August of this year, there was a tentative deal. Basically, the Maduro was going to take on 2,000 Venezuelan returnees,
Mm-hmm.
I think every month. Might have even been every week from ICE. We capture them, we send them back. They accept them, no questions asked. Right now, they're taking in about 150 to 200. Another part of the deal was they were going to sell increased levels of Venezuelan oil to U.S. oil firms, notably Chevron. And then another thing was they were going to open up exclusively to U.S. firms to begin developing all the untapped rare earth minerals in Venezuela. Now, that sounded like a good deal, but the Trump administration said, no, we don't want that. And they deployed that flotilla instead. The only reason this makes sense, because Trump thinks he's a deal maker. This is his thing. Why wouldn't he take this amazing deal? It's because Trump believes Maduro overthrew the government in 2020 here in the United States. He's probably right on some level. And so he's not going to let Maduro get away with it. And so,
So
yeah.
this is like the biggest elephant in the room. It's the biggest story of the century, yet no one is talking about
No, you
it.
get suppressed. I mean, I'm being shadow banned
Yeah,
on Twitter,
yeah.
and I think it's partly because of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only guy talking about it. I say this to people who are very seasoned foreign policy experts on our side, and they look at me like I have 3 heads. I say when
Yeah.
they're like, why are we going into Venezuela? It's on flimsier evidence than Iraq in 2003. I said it has nothing to do with a threat like you're understanding it. It has to do with Trump thinks Maduro stole the election for Biden through these companies that we were using for electronic voting software.
Still are using all over the United States.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And that's the only, because it doesn't make sense otherwise. If you're looking at it rationally, you're saying, well, Maduro just offered the mother of all deals and Trump flipped him the bird. That's not like Trump to do that. It is if Trump was out for blood. Trump wants revenge because he thinks Maduro screwed him over in 2020. This is personal. It's not going to end until Maduro is either dead or in handcuffs.
I agree. You know, and I saw Laura Loomer posting about, and I'm not plus or minus on her, but I'm saying she was posting about Chevron over and over and over. I'm like, that's not organic. Something. No. Why are you doing that? Somebody's telling you to do. Or
well,
you
have to understand with Loomer is tied to Caroline Wren. Caroline Wren is an unofficial, or she might now be an official. I don't know, but she's an unofficial, as last I remember, lobbyist for Chevron. She's the two of them are tied in with Grinnell. Grinnell is the one leading the jihad in the Trump administration for a peace deal with Maduro, and it all goes back to the fact that Chevron wants permanent access to Venezuela's oil. And they have to go through this recertification process under current law. And in May, there was a big fight in the Trump administration between the Grinnell, Caroline Wren, Loomer wing versus the Marco Rubio wing.
I was going to bring him up. Yeah. I mean, he's the star of the show now, right?
Right now.
We've been talking about he's bringing back the Monroe Doctrine for some time with our Miami people, but go ahead.
Oh, 100%. You know, I live on the other coast of Florida, and, you know, I've known, you know, Rubio, and I have some problems with Rubio. I think he's too much of a neocon, but on this issue, and to be fair to him, when I worked on the Hill over a decade ago now, he was one of the leading voices on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He was on the Senate. I worked on the House, but he was one of the only people who consistently said we need to take the Western Hemisphere more seriously. And this is a conclusion of that long-running career arc for Rubio. And thank God Rubio is winning this fight right now in the administration, and the Grinnells of the world are not. Because in this case, Maduro, if it's true, and I think it probably is on some level, that Maduro had a hand in rigging the 2020 election, we can't let that stand. You just can't. You have to. That's a regime change directed against us, and it was successful. And
it was extremely devastating. And
we're still paying down that.
And there's plenty of evidence to support that. From, you know, and Patrick Byrne's been talking about. Everybody's been talking about this for years.
Well, I just tell people to go back and look at the fact that you now have under oath a recording, a video. Now his face is blurred, but of a high-ranking Venezuelan official turned whistleblower in which he testifies for several hours in great vivid detail, unequivocally, how Venezuela learned about the exploits, how they use the exploits in our system to basically manipulate our elections to ensure that candidates win who will be more favorable to Venezuela and Venezuela's allies in China and Russia and Iran, and that's usually the Democrats. So you have it under oath. Somebody is saying it under oath. If they're lying, they will be prosecuted or worse. They're not lying. This individual is telling the truth.
So this ties into a much bigger thing because you've got, you know, Air Force and Navy aviation assets poised to strike targets inside of Venezuela.
They're going in the next couple of weeks. 100%. I'm 100% convinced that I've been told this by people involved that it's all lined up, ready to roll.
And then you've got Russia. I had heard, I haven't verified it, sending troops there now, or at least in small contingents.
Well, Russia has had Wagner Group guys on the ground. In fact, I don't know if it's still the case, but I do know up until about a year ago, during the whole election chaos down there, Wagner guys formed the nucleus of Maduro's personal guard. So I don't know if he's still being protected by them, but I know until a year ago he was.
So that begs a whole nother question: is maybe the reason Trump's a little more firm on Ukraine, which I don't agree with, but maybe he thinks Russia's involved with Venezuela in this whole thing.
Maybe. You know? I don't think actually. I think Trump rhetorically is being tougher in the Ukraine issue. I don't see any real movement from him following through on these threats to Russia over Ukraine. I think that's a big show for him to kind of quietly pivot away. What he told the Europeans is basically tag, you're it. And the Europeans aren't going to be able to live up to the expectations.
Right.
And I think ultimately in a year or so, we're going to get some kind of a ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine. So I do believe there's a connection between Russia and Venezuela, obviously. But I don't know if Trump is being tougher on Ukraine because of Venezuela. I think another thing to keep an eye out on is I actually think Trump is being a very sly fox here, and I might be wrong, but I think really the timing of Venezuela is also aligned perfectly with Netanyahu's desire to reopen the Iran war that ended inconclusively in June. I think Trump is desperately trying to avoid having to repeat another airstrike against Iran.
I sure hope so.
Well, I think about it. If he's getting Israel and Hamas to at least sign a ceasefire, whether it holds is irrelevant. So he's helping Israel to close that front down temporarily so Israel can focus on Iran. At the same time, though, he's opening this Venezuela thing up that's going to drain air assets and tomahawks and all the time and effort and energy of the U.S. military is going to be directed at Venezuela. So if the Israelis, as I think is going to happen, are going to bite off more than they can chew in Iran, Netanyahu's going to phone Trump saying, you got to do another B-2 strike. You got to help us out. Trump's going to say, sorry, Bubba, can't help you. All my assets are now busy in Venezuela. So that is how I think Trump is going to avoid, hopefully, a major, major war in the Middle East. He'll let Netanyahu burn himself out in Iran, and then ultimately will scale back because Israel will know they can't rely on the United States because we're too busy in Venezuela.
Well, if you take that further, then you're talking Iron Dome assets. I mean, Israel shut down the 12-day war. It wasn't Iran because they were getting pummeled.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So,
you have to understand there's 200 with Iran. I just did a deep dive on this. There's around 200 hypersonic Fatah 1 and 2 long-range ballistic missiles that the Iranians had in June. Those systems were basically untouched by the bombing. A colleague of mine assessed to me on the phone last night. He thinks that since that time, they've probably doubled that number. So anywhere between 200 and 400 hypersonic ballistic missiles the Iranians have access to. There is no defense against those weapons. Those are the weapons that did a lot of the damage to Tel Aviv that the Israelis weren't allowed to talk about with the media. So what I think is going to happen is Israel's going to open up this front thinking the Trump administration is going to have their back all the way. And then the Israelis are going to be in for a rude awakening when Trump says, sorry, buddy, I can't help you. It's a little bit of a revenge play from Trump. Remember, this is what Netanyahu did on a smaller scale during the Soleimani strike in 2020. Trump went out on a limb for Netanyahu, planned with Israel to kill Soleimani, the IRGC general. And then at the last minute, literally the night before, Netanyahu called and said, hey, buddy, I can't help you out. Sorry. Payback, I think, is coming in a very big way.
Well, then that makes you want, Marco Rubio is one of the biggest neocons out there, him and Huckabee. So where is he going to play in all
Well,
this?
I think Marco Rubio, that's a great question. I think this is Trump manipulating everybody, including his own people who he knows are poison pills. Trump, I think, is giving Marco Rubio a bigger low-hanging fruit in Venezuela. But the understanding is we're not going to be able to do two things at once. And so Rubio is placated because he's dealing with the Venezuela thing, which I think for him is a bigger issue than the Israeli issue. It
is. That's smart. Yeah.
Huckabee, on the other hand, nobody really cares what Huckabee thinks. He can go out and wax eloquent all he wants.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
And wail at the wall all he wants, but ultimately He doesn't have any real juice. He doesn't have any real power. He's just a spokesman living in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, where I don't know now. I think he's in Jerusalem.
Well, he's jumped the shark big time.
Yeah,
So that's an interesting point because Rubio's power base is Florida.
Oh yeah,
Miami
he's
and
not
the
gonna.
Venezuelans.
Yeah, he cares more about that. That Trump has done something. Whether again, I've always been skeptical about 5D chess Trump, but on something like this, I'm looking at this going, this doesn't really add up unless Trump realizes the birth of the tripolar world is here. The United States cannot behave as it has for the last 30 years, trying to run every aspect of the world. So he's going to give red meat verbally to the globalists and the transatlanticists and the Zionists, because he knows he can't deal with all of them coming at him politically. So he'll tell them what they want to hear. But the real deed is him moving away from Eurasia and the Rimland and going into Western Hemispheric defense and Golden Dome. Those are the two big initiatives. And that's also going to affect, by the way, that's going to affect bigly the desire on the part of the Pentagon to defend the first island chain in the Indo-Pacific. I don't think we're going to do any. I think Trump's going to pay lip service, but ultimately he's getting ready to sign a very big deal that basically gives China the first island chain.
And you're talking semiconductors too. So
absolutely,
I mean, that's playing into all this, and we're not there yet as far as onshoring production.
Oh, and at this rate, Wall Street is so against it. They've been against it consistently. In fact, they've made bets against it with their investments for years. It is not going to happen. And so what I think is going to happen here, you see already the movement. Trump has gone from being, letting slip the, crying havoc and letting slip the dogs of trade war against China to almost overnight, basically surrendering to China across the board on key issues, notably NVIDIA chips being sold to China. And of course, Jensen Huang is over the moon about this because Jensen wants to sell these things to China with no strings attached. And he's almost got that now. You now, and the reason all this is happening is because in April, Xi Jinping called Trump and said, hey, pretty trade war you're starting against us. We're going to cut off America from the rare earth minerals. And that is what fundamentally shifted everything. Everything in the trade war that we've been waging on China has now become conciliatory, seeking a better deal. All of this is because China has us by the cojones. They've got us where they want us on rare earth minerals. That's the silver bullet in every case. And China has dominance. They have 68% of the world's rare earth mineral sources, and they have 90% of the world's rare earth mineral refiners. We don't have anything like that, and every technology we have relies on rare earth minerals. So China's got us by the you-know-what, and that's why Trump is now pivoting. He's playing nice with Xi. Furthermore, he's holding up $400 million or $400 billion aid package, lethal aid package to Taiwan. They're not going to get those weapons anytime soon. He's basically signaling to Beijing behind the scenes, we're going to let you basically have what you want in the first island chain. The same thing I think is being done behind the scenes to Russia and Europe. And I think the same thing is being done with Iran, where we're telling them, yeah, we're going to let Israel off the leash a little bit, but we're not going to have their back if they get into trouble. And we're going to reposition to the Western Hemisphere. That's the real main center of gravity now.
Very, very interesting. And then you look at how much rare earth is in Donbass, do you know, or in Ukraine?
They've got a lot. I don't know the percentages. And, a lot of people don't know the percentages because a lot of it is on tap. Here's the deal. Besant did this big, fire and brimstone middle of the night deal with Ukraine, forcing them to sign this deal on rare earths. Well, the Ukrainians are laughing at us as always, because ultimately they know they don't even have control over most of these sources. Most of the sources of rare earths are now under the Russian feet in Ukraine. So all these deals we're cutting are for show. And by the way, the Ukrainian government had already promised the exact same amount of rare earths from the exact same places in Ukraine to the British and the French in January. So they're just shining us on in their own way. But they don't realize that Trump is playing them. Trump is getting us out. And so we are repositioning, and we are quietly acknowledging the birth of a tripolar world, of a declining United States, a resurgent Russia in Europe and the Middle East, and a rising dragon in the Far East that is China.
And I'm not sure that's such a bad thing if we can protect our own borders.
It's not a bad thing. In that case, it's not. But I will say tripolar systems are historically unstable. If you pay attention to the works of Randall Schweller, he wrote a book called Deadly. I have it right here. Deadly Imbalances, came out in '99. He's a professor, and he basically documented how, in his opinion, the interwar years was really a tripolar system between the United States, the Soviet Union, and the Nazi Third Reich, and ultimately that collapsed into World War II. Something similar is likely to occur because you're going to have three unstable power players jockeying against each other. And so the only hope now is that we avoid a war and get to the multipolar system, which will become a little bit more stable with multiple centers of power.
And who's going to rise there? Brazil?
You'll have India, you'll have Turkey. Turkey is definitely going to be a power player. Brazil will be a player. And at that point, we'll talk more about BRICS becoming a factor, the rival to the U.S. dominated economic world system, which is going away. That's dead. The dollar is the weakest it's been. You've got Trump buying Bitcoin to offset the debt load. You've got China, Russia, and buying lots of gold. The dollar dominance is over.
Turkey is interesting to me because that's Israel. Turkey doesn't like Israel. They don't like what they're doing in Syria, and it's going to clash.
They are partners of convenience right now. You've got Israeli and Turkish interests aligning temporarily in Syria. They're aligning temporarily in Azerbaijan, which we've spoken about before. But Turkey is chomping at the bit to basically cut loose Israel. And I think what's going to happen is Israel's going to overplay its hand in Iran, and they're going to find that they can't do what they want to do without U.S. help. The U.S. is not going to help them to the extent Jerusalem thinks they will, and that will create a new paradigm in the Middle East where suddenly the Turks are stepping up more in the region, and they're going to basically consolidate power with the Arabs. They will counter quietly the Iranians, and they will contain Israel. Already the Arab world is working against Israel again to contain them. You had Egypt floating this rapid response force, and the only reason Saudi Arabia vetoed it and Qatar vetoed it is because they don't want to have to defer to Egypt. Instead, Saudi Arabia pivoted and has this nuclear deal now with Pakistan, where now Pakistan is coming in. So now you're going to have a whole Islamic-dominated Middle East where Israel is on its way out and probably on its way to collapse, and Turkey will be the one, whether it's 10 or 20 years from now, Turkey will be the one that kills Israel. The Zionist project will die, I believe.
I've heard that a lot lately, from not just you, from multiple other people.
I heard this from two Israelis because I don't really talk to people. I talk to some people in Saudi. I talk to some people. The Turks hate me for the most part. I talk to a lot of Israelis, and this is coming from two Israeli expatriates. Now they are members of the liberal side in Israel, and they're fretting about what Netanyahu is doing or going too far. But this is from two Israelis who told me, and these are two of my dinosaurs. These are old guys, very pro-Israel, obviously. They served in IDF, and they're telling me this, and they're retirees down here, and they're telling me this, that they are convinced that Israel's going to be basically completely surrounded and overrun because of what Netanyahu's doing.
Well, the long-term consequences of this.
Yeah. It's a new Middle East. It's as Lee Slusher, who's a dear friend of mine, he's a former U.S. intelligence expert on this region. He said to me about 2 months ago, he said it's a once in a generation sea change going on in the Middle East right now, and it will never be the same.
I have Israeli contacts as well, and many of them are, I told them, look, I mean, jumping the shark is not a strong enough term. I mean, you went as Trump said, you went too far. You had Ben Gvir running around with, these people they took off the yachts, coming off Gaza, like taunting them in prison, and this is all over the internet. People are seeing this stuff,
You're seeing that. Well, I'm so like, this is just a microcosm. I can't stand Greta Thunberg. I think she's a kook.
I agree.
I also think it's disgusting what she was subjected to in an Israeli prison. I think they had no business arresting her. I think they had no business. I mean, it was a form of torture. It wasn't physical torture, but it was a form of torture, psychological terror.
Well, they were waking them up every 2 hours. I've been through that. It's not
well,
fun.
and the Swiss embassy confirmed the story in the Guardian. So originally I saw that story in the Guardian, and I was like, it might just be, propaganda, because there's a lot of lies that the Arab side puts out. They are not, Hamas, and they're not our friends. But then they lie as a matter of course.
Yeah,
but
they're very good at it.
the Swiss embassy confirmed, they checked in on her personally, and they confirmed the story that she was made to take pictures kissing the Israeli flag, that she was subjected to sleep deprivation. All of that is hurting Israel. It's not helping the Israeli cause. And the crazy thing is, after 10/7, most of the world had some degree of sympathy for Israel, and they've squandered it in about 2.5 years.
Completely.
Yeah.
Last question. In Armenia, the Pashinyan just put the head of one of the senior bishops in jail for 2 years.
Yeah.
He's going after Christianity hard. Going to take over the church. We've got the Trump, Trump route for international peace and prosperity going through to connect Azeri land in the south. But the guy was in the White House, and he's acting like Stalin in Armenia. This hasn't happened since the Soviet Union, where you're putting religious leaders in jail.
Yeah.
Where's this going to go there? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, what this is a proxy fight really between U.S., Israel, NATO elements like Turkey versus the Russians for control over that Zangezur corridor, that trade corridor that cuts from, the Far East through Central Asia into Europe. And the Americans, as always, have sided with anti-Christian forces. Look, the Russians have always acted as a stabilizing element in that part of the world. What we are doing there is trying to destabilize the Russian position. And I don't know if it's going to work. I think the Russians are very distracted right now in Ukraine. I know that they're moving 15,000 troops into Armenia, that base they have. I don't know if that's going to make much of a difference because of the kind of covert action that's underway. But just your audience needs to understand, the Christians are the latest of Armenia, the latest victim of this Western, U.S., Israeli, Turkish push to reconfigure the entire trading profile of Eurasia so that it orients itself toward U.S.-backed elements. And the Christians are simply in the way. Yeah. And to me as a Christian, I don't like that my government is aligning with anti-Christian elements. I don't care if the Russians have sway over Armenia. I don't want to see my Christian brothers and sisters annihilated, and they are being annihilated. And I don't see anybody, by the way, in the campuses crying. And as a related kind of topic here, I don't see any of the kids in the campuses who are so gung-ho about Hamas. I don't see them getting worked up about the tragedy in Armenia against the Christians, or the Christian slaughter in Nigeria or Syria, for that matter.
Syria, and also Lebanon has been attacked.
That's right.
Recently, but
and you were just there, right?
Yeah, and we're gonna be back in Beirut in a couple of weeks, but also that's connected to Armenia because there's so many Armenians from the genocide down there. But that's one of our at CDM. That's one of our big points is to speak up for the Christian communities over there. Well, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate your time. Anything else? Where do people follow you?
Follow me at @WeTheBrandon on Twitter. I'm shadow banned there, but that's where I am for now. You can get my books at Amazon or wherever your favorite bookstore is. And check out my new podcast. This is my 6th week doing it. The National Security Hour. It airs every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on iHeart, and then it's available the next day on any Apple podcast, any podcast thing. And it's through AmericaOutloud.news.
Got it. We're shadow banned too. You know what's interesting? We're throttled completely, and also Rumble is starting to throttle us.
That's not surprising.
Which really pisses me off.
Well, it's because of the Teal Israeli connection.
Yeah, I mean, we're dropping followers there like crazy. But Truth, we've got over 6 million followers there now. It's wild.
Devin Nunes got me my check mark personally on Truth Social, but then I've been critical of Trump, and I noticed that my Truth Social account is completely See, my problem is I anger. Eventually, I anger everybody.
That's where we are, man. That's why I like you so much. I think. Thanks, Brandon. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.